Picture someone you know. Maybe it's a friend from university, maybe a colleague from your first job. Smart, genuinely talented. The kind of person who, when they walked into a room, you thought, this person is going to do something. And for a while, they had all the momentum in the world. They talked about what they were building. You believed them. Then, slowly, without any single dramatic failure, they just stopped. The dreams didn't disappear. They got quieter. And now, years later, they're exactly where they were. Still capable, still smart, still quietly waiting for something to click. But here's what nobody talks about. It wasn't ambition they were missing. It wasn't talent. It wasn't even work ethic. What they were missing was something so invisible, so woven into the architecture of daily life, that most people will never name it, let alone fix it. And by the end of this, you will. Because the gap between potential and actual achievement isn't a gap of effort, it's a gap of systems. And systems, unlike talent, unlike circumstance, unlike the particular hand you were dealt, can be built. So stay with me, because what I'm about to walk you through is going to reframe not just why you haven't done the thing yet, but who you actually are underneath the story you've been telling yourself. Here's the uncomfortable truth that changes everything. Your brain is not trying to help you grow, it's trying to help you survive. And those two things are almost never the same. The nervous system you're running on right now was sculpted by hundreds of thousands of years of evolutionary pressure that rewarded one thing above all else: energy conservation. Your brain is a prediction machine, constantly building models of the world so it can operate on autopilot, burning as few calories as possible. Every habit you have, every automatic response, every familiar pattern, that's your brain doing its job beautifully. But when growth requires you to do something new, something uncertain, something that doesn't yet have a neural groove worn into it, your brain experiences that as a threat. Not metaphorically, neurologically. The anterior cingulate cortex, which monitors for prediction errors, fires. The default mode network pulls you back toward the known. And in that moment, what feels like laziness or resistance is actually your nervous system running an ancient protective program that was never designed for ambition. And this is the part most people miss entirely. The people you see who seem to move through life with ease, who wake up and execute, who build things and ship things and show up consistently, they are not running on stronger willpower, they are running on better automation. They've outsourced their highest value behaviors to habit, which means their prefrontal cortex, the seat of decision-making, reasoning, and self-control, stays free for actual thinking. They're not disciplined, they're automated. And the difference between those two things is the difference between grinding through every day and actually getting somewhere. Now let me ask you something, and I want you to really sit with this. Have you ever had a day where you intended to do something, knew you should do it, wanted to do it, and still didn't? Not because something went wrong, not because you were too tired, but because somehow the distance between intention and action felt like miles, and you couldn't make yourself cross it? If that's familiar, drop it in the comments, because I want to know how often this actually happens. I'd be willing to bet it's not once in a while. I'd be willing to bet it's close to every day. That gap, the one between what you mean to do and what you actually do, has a name in behavioral psychology. It's called the intention-behavior gap, and it's not a character flaw, it's a systems problem. When behavior isn't supported by environment, by cue, by ritual, by identity, when it's left to willpower alone, it fails. Not sometimes, almost always. Because willpower is a finite resource. It depletes across the day. Every decision you make, every moment of self-regulation, every time you resist something or choose between competing options, it costs. And by the afternoon, by the evening, by the end of a hard week, the tank is empty. The people who seem to have endless discipline aren't drawing on a deeper well, they've just built systems that require less willpower to begin with. Here's a concrete example. In a famous study of judges making parole decisions, researchers found that the time of day was one of the strongest predictors of outcome. Early in the morning, after breaks, after meals, favorable rulings. As the session wore on, decisions collapsed toward the default. Denial. Not because the judges were bad at their jobs, but because judgment is metabolically expensive and the brain, when depleted, reverts to the path of least resistance. Now think about that and apply it to your own life. The version of you that sits down to do creative work at 9 p.m. after a full day of decisions isn't a lazy version of you. It's a depleted version of you, and the problem isn't effort, it's timing, structure, and the systems that support or undermine your best self. But I want to go deeper than habits and willpower, because there's something underneath all of it that determines whether any system ever gets built in the first place. And in a moment, I'll show you exactly what it is, and why it's the thing that actually changes everything. It's identity. Not your personality, not your habits, not your morning routine or your productivity system, or the number of alarms you set. Your identity, the story you carry, mostly unconsciously, about who you are. Because here's what the research actually shows. Behavior change that conflicts with self-concept is extraordinarily hard to sustain. You can install a new habit, force yourself to show up, white-knuckle through a discipline protocol, and it will hold for a week, maybe a month. But if somewhere in the background you still believe you're the kind of person who doesn't follow through, who always gets distracted, who starts things and doesn't finish them, that belief will eventually win. Not because you're weak, because identity is a powerful regulatory system. The brain is continuously filtering experience to confirm what it already believes. When you act against your self-concept, you experience dissonance, and the path of least resistance is always to drift back toward who you think you are. This is why two people can follow the same program and get completely different results. One of them is performing a new behavior. The other is becoming a new person. And the gap between those two things is the gap between temporary change and actual transformation. If you want the next piece of this, because we're going somewhere very specific with all of this, make sure you're subscribed, because the follow-on to this conversation is even more practical. Now here's where this gets interesting. Identity isn't fixed. It never was. The idea that you are a certain kind of person, organized or chaotic, disciplined or scattered, someone who finishes things or someone who doesn't, that's not a biological fact. It's an accumulated narrative built from repeated experiences, often from very early in life, that got encoded as self-knowledge. And like any narrative, it can be rewritten. Not through affirmations, not through motivation, through evidence. Small, consistent, undeniable evidence that challenges the old story. James Clear calls these identity votes. Every time you do what the person you want to become would do, even in the smallest possible way, you cast a vote for a new identity. Not through grand declarations, through action, through repetition, through the slow accumulation of proof. Think about the most competent person you know, someone who just seems to have it together. I want you to actually picture them. Chances are, you're not picturing someone who is fundamentally different from you at some deep level. You're picturing someone whose defaults are different. Someone whose environment, structure, and self-conception quietly push them in a particular direction before willpower even enters the conversation. They probably don't think of themselves as especially disciplined. They just think, this is what I do. And that thought is the entire thing. Because when something is who you are, it doesn't require motivation. You don't motivate yourself to brush your teeth. You don't summon courage to put on shoes before you leave the house. Those behaviors are so deeply integrated into your self-concept that they happen without friction. The goal isn't to become a more motivated person. The goal is to install the right behaviors so deeply into your identity that they stop requiring motivation at all. And here's the question worth sitting with right now. If this is already clicking for you, drop something in the comments. What would your daily life look like if your highest value behaviors were as automatic as your lowest cost ones? What if showing up to the work, starting the project, doing the difficult thing, What if those had the same frictionless quality as checking your phone in the morning? That's not a fantasy. That's just a different level of integration. And integration is a skill. It's learnable. So, let's talk about what actually builds it, because this is where most self-improvement content leaves you hanging with inspiration and no mechanism. The mechanism is environmental design. Your environment is not neutral. Every cue in your surroundings is either pulling you toward your best behaviors or away from them. The phone on the desk is an invitation to distraction. The running shoes visible by the door are an invitation to movement. The open laptop with nothing but your work document on the screen is an invitation to start. Most people try to change their behavior while leaving their environment completely unchanged, and then blame themselves when it doesn't work. But the research on behavioral cues is unambiguous. Context shapes behavior at a level far below conscious decision-making. You are, always, responding to your environment. The question is whether your environment is designed by you or just accumulated by default. The people who seem to effortlessly execute aren't fighting their environment. They've engineered it. They've put friction in the path of their worst behaviors and removed it from the path of their best ones. They've made the thing they should do the thing that's easiest to do. That's not a personality trait. That's a decision, and it's one you can make. Here's what I want to leave you with, and this is the thing I want you to actually carry out of this conversation. You are not a person who lacks potential. You are not someone who doesn't have what it takes. You are a person who has been running behavioral software that was never consciously designed. That software was written by your history, your environment, your accumulated self-concept. And it's been running in the background, shaping your choices, limiting your defaults, telling you quietly, every single day, what's possible for someone like you. And you have believed it. Not because you're naive, but because it felt like reality. But it isn't reality, it's a system, and systems can be redesigned. Not through a single dramatic moment of insight, not through a motivational spike that fades by Tuesday, through the patient, deliberate, almost boring work of building better defaults. One cue, one identity vote, one small moment of evidence that rewrites the story. That's where potential actually goes to become something real. Not in talent, not in inspiration, in the invisible architecture of your daily life, quietly rebuilt, one decision at a time. The gap between who you are and who you could be is not a gap of worthiness, it's a gap of design. And now that you can see it, you can close it. If this shifted something for you, subscribe and share this with someone who needs to hear it. And I genuinely want to know, what's the one default in your life that's been holding you back? Tell me in the comments. I read them. And the next time we talk, we're going even further in.